Hello peeps, welcome to the channel, and this is the 7th part of my 5TB Masters build. And in this one we're going to be looking at all the old Handheld systems like the Gameboys, the Game Gear, the Lynx and stuff like that. Basically there's not a great deal of configuration needed on these, but I'll still show you a few little tips how to go about stuff, mainly about the bezels, the decorations, which is basically the borders. We'll have a look at all the different ones, then you can decide which is your favourite. I already know which is mine, I already know which I prefer to see. I'll also show you a couple of little tips with the bezel project. But basically these handheld systems are just like the 8-bit systems, the 16-bit systems. They basically just plug and play, put your ROMs in and go. You haven't got to do anything with them. So we'll get straight on with the video. Right, so yeah, I'm not going to show you copying the games over, because I've already showed them on the last couple of games. I'll quickly show you what systems I'm going to be putting on, but besides that, I'll just get straight into the configuration. So again, we'll come into Retrobat, ROMs. We're going to be putting on the Game Boy, which is GB, Game Boy Advance, which is GBA, Game Boy Color, GBC, the Game Gear, which is obviously the Sega Game Gear, the Lynx, which is the Atari Lynx, the Neo Geo Pocket Color, and the WonderSwan Color. A lot of the WonderSwan Color games are Japanese. The Neo Geo Pocket, that tends to have more American stroke English games in, but there's still some playable games on the WonderSwan Color, so I'm going to leave them on. So we'll load Retrobat up. I'll start off by downloading the bezel project for all the systems we've just put on. So press start, come down to updates and downloads, down to the bezel project, and then I'm going to download all the handhelds that we just put on. The Game Gear, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, Lynx, and lastly at the bottom, the WonderSwan Color. Click it, then click install. Go down and do them all. They don't take very long to download. And basically what the bezel project will do is download all the games that they have artwork for. It doesn't just download what games you've got, it just downloads the full collection. So firstly, if we go into Lynx, press back, come down to Advanced System Options. On the emulator, it's going to be the Nothing Lynx, which is set on auto. Again, you don't have to change anything on these. You can have a look at this Pixel Perfect if you want. I put them on the handhelds. I can't tell a blind bit of difference when you put it on. Obviously, the main thing that we're going to be looking at is the decorations, which is the borders. So I'll load them up first with no decorations on whatsoever. So we'll go along and we'll have a look at checkered flag on the Atari Lynx. No bezels, as you can see, there's no borders on it. Now this is all going to be personal preference, what I'm showing here. I've got my preference, other people might have theirs. Some people might like to play them like that. But I'll show you the 3 different options we've got on each system, and then you can make your mind up for yourself. So now we'll come back out. We'll go down to decorations. If we go up, it'll take us to the bottom of the list, which is the bezel project, and they're the ones that we're going to be looking at now. A bezel project is basically a custom border for each and every game that they've got the borders made for. They won't have every single game, but they do have the majority of them. Now, as you can see, the actual borders say checkered flag on the left and right side instead of just having a black border. A lot of people prefer these. I'm not a fan of them on the handhelds, but I put them on all the 8-bit systems, the 16-bit systems, the arcades. I think they're brilliant on them. But the handhelds, I personally prefer the bezels. So again, we'll come back out. We'll drop down to decorations. And we're going to go down to the bottom, then go up 1 to the default unglazed. Now, the default unglazed is always the borders for whatever system you're setting up. Whether it be an 8-bit system, a 16-bit system, or the newer consoles, it's basically they're always for that system that you're setting up. Now, as you can see, what it'll do now is make it look like an Atari Lynx with the borders on the screen. This is my preference for every handheld, to be fair. They automatically shrink the screens, nothing looks stretched on them. I just think it looks so much better on these. So now we'll take a look at the options on RetroArch. So whatever you've got your hotkey set at, you'll press that along with your B button and it'll take us into the RetroArch menu. Now, as with them all, if you go down to controls, port 1 controls, you can change any setting in here, what you don't like. You might want the A and B button the opposite way around. There's an option here that says rotate screen and D-pad. I tried it, it wasn't doing anything when I tried it, basically. And also the options buttons didn't seem to do anything either. So if we go down to the options, as you can see, there's basically 2 options. You can change the colour format to a 32-bit, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be barely noticeable. Like I say, with these systems, you don't have to do anything. Just put your games in and play them. So we'll have a look at the WonderSwan Color. Again, same with the Lynx. All these options here are all personal preference. They're basically, there's nothing there that you need to change. Some people might like to change the shader sets and stuff like that, put scan lines and the different shaders on, but I don't tend to mess about them. But anyway, we'll have a look at the shader sets while we're in here. We'll load up Rockman, which is basically Mega Man. Again, we'll be showing it firstly without any bezels on. And I'll try the different shaders without any bezels on, because we'll get a fuller screen. This is standard without a shader. Pressing select on the button or back on your Xbox button flips the screen, because some of the games are horizontal, some of the games are vertical. So we'll come back out, back button, we'll go down to Advanced System Options, Shader Set, we'll try the CRT New Pixie. That's basically made it like an old curved CRT monitor, like in the early 90s. So we'll come back in, we'll try Enhanced. Now this one's like all scanliney, but it's like a real deep scan line. I don't like that at all, to be fair. Again, back, Advanced System Options, down to the shaders, and we'll try the Flatten Glow, which again, is scanlining. It's I can't work out whether it's deeper or not than the last one. It seems it makes it really pixelated. So we'll come back out. Now we'll try the handheld one. So again, we've got the scan line, but it's nowhere near as profound as the other ones, it seems. Up to yet, if I was going to choose one, this would be the one. Come back out. We'll try the NTSC 320px. I can remember my old telly looking like that, like one of my first widescreen tellies, sort of like a blurry, not very sharp picture. With these shader sets, it's totally personal preference. I don't particularly like them, and I wouldn't use them, but some people might prefer to see them. We'll try the retro shader. Again, that's massively too much. I don't know why anybody would ever play that. Now this is the scan lines filter, which does look a little old school. I could see why some people might want to play it, but it's not my cup of tea. Finally, we'll have a look at this VHS one. I've seen this before. It looks like you're playing on an old VHS video recorder, for those who remember them, which really does look like an old VHS tape player. But again, I've showed people them just to show them what they do. Obviously, it doesn't harm going in and trying them all out for yourselves. I don't like them. I'm going to just be sticking to the original with no shaders on. So now we'll have a look at the bezel project. And as you can see, the borders, even though it's in Japanese, they're the Rockman borders, basically. They don't look too bad. So come back out, press back, Advanced System Options, Decorations, and again, we'll go on the default unglazed. And like I say, personal preference. For me, I prefer these. Some people might want that screen a little bit bigger, but I prefer them like this. They're going to be a more accurate ratio scale when they're shrunk down a little bit like this. So while we're in here, we'll quickly have a look at Tetris. And as you can see, this is the flipped screen. So if you press the back button or your select button, it's going to flip the screen. Now when you do that, you can see it's really, really stretched and it doesn't look great. That's how it should look when we turn it back, but obviously you're not going to play it like that. So for those who are serious and wanted to play some of the WonderSwan colour games, I'd probably go along with the bezel project for the vertical games. As you can see, it splits it, puts it in the middle, but it's not stretched. It's also cut a little bit of the game off as well, but still it looks better than having it so stretched as it was before. So next up, we'll look at the Gameboy. Again, press the back button, come down to Advanced System Options. The emulator will be the Alberto Gambate. We'll have a look at the two Super Mario Bros. Games. So firstly, we'll go with Super Mario Land without any borders on. And as you can see, it's adding colour to the games on this. Which, again, I know I keep saying it, but it's personal preference. I don't like colours on it because I had a Game Boy, obviously, and I love the two Super Mario Bros. Games on it. So we'll load up Mario Land 2. And again, it's added this colour to it, which I personally think looks a load of crap. And also, for those who didn't know, if you press your hotkey and you're left on the D-pad or right on your D-pad, you'll fast forward or rewind the game. So if you basically die somewhere and you want to cheat on it and you want to rewind it, just press your hotkey and push left and it'll rewind the game. That's for most games that use a RetroArt core. So we'll press his hotkey and our red B button on the Xbox controller to take us into his RetroArt menu. Obviously, while you're in here, you can have a look at your controls again. Like I've said, you can put Turbo Fire on. You can change A and B buttons and the start and select buttons. You can set it up however you want it, basically. But anyway, we'll come down to options. The GB colorization option here is on auto. Now we'll have a look at the GBC option first. And as you can see, it's changed the colour. But again, it's not my cup of tea. I want to remember the games as I played them back in the day. So we'll come back to options. And we're going to change it onto internal. We'll come back out. Now that's made it more like I remember. So now if we go back in, that's the option that I want to save. We're going to go into options, manage core. We're going to come down to save content directory options. Now at the top where you can see the RetroArt core is going to change to the GB options core. So that's basically changed it for every single game. I don't like the colour in the old Game Boy games, to be fair. Now we'll have a quick load up of Super Mario Land, the first one again. Now that's more like it. Again, some people might prefer the colour. Now we'll come back out, press back, we'll go down to the advanced system options, go down to his decorations, and we'll try the bezel project. Now this game has obviously not got a bezel attached to it for the bezel project, because it's loaded up the default unglazed. So we'll have a look at Mario Land 2, and exactly the same here. So I know full well the bezel project would have the bezels for these two games. So I'm going to guess it's how it's named. For the bezels to load, the image that it's downloaded for the bezel project needs to be called exactly the same as your ROM. Now when I look at my Super Mario Land 2 ROM, you can see on the end, it's got in brackets USA, Europe, Revision B. And I'm going to assume that the bezel project is named something totally different. There's also another way of doing this, which I'm going to show you when I do the arcade. Using a program, you can rename everything. We're going to come into his Retrobat folder. We're going to go to Decorations and the Bezel Project. Games. Now we'll go down to GB, which is obviously the Game Boy. And we're going to scroll right down this list. This is all the game image borders, what the Bezel Project has found. So we're going to scroll down and find the Super Mario Land 2. And there we go. You can see it says USA, Europe, and there's no revision after it. But obviously, because the game's called something different, it won't find it. So if we go into his Retrobat folder again, we'll go down to his ROMs, into Game Boy. We go back down to Super Mario Land 2. Now you can either left click it, wait a little second, left click it again, and it's going to highlight it up because we need to rename the image file to what the game's called. So left click, wait a quick second, left click again, it's highlighted it, right click, copy. So then we go to the Super Mario Land document file and the image file, and we right click and paste it in both of these. Same with Mario Land 2, left click, couple of seconds, left click again, copy, and copy it to these two files here. I'm not sure you need to do it to the text file, but it might still work anyway without it. I'm not 100%. Basically, if you prefer the bezel project, and there's certain games that haven't got bezels, if you come in here, you can do it like that. Like I say, there is another way of doing it. There's a piece of software called Fuzzy Renamer, which might help. I've had mixed results with that. Sometimes it works really good, and sometimes it's not great. So we'll load Retro back up again now. Come back to Game Boy. We'll load Super Mario Land up first, and as you can see now we've renamed it the bezels there. Come back out, Super Mario Land 2, and again there's a lovely pretty bezel. So now we'll come back out, back, advanced options, and we'll try the default unglazed, which you've basically already seen. So if your game doesn't have a bezel in the bezel project, it will automatically flick to the default unglazed setting, which is this. Again, I prefer playing it like this. I think it adds a lot more to it. The screen size looks a lot better. Quick look at Super Mario Land 2 as well, with the default unglazed bezel. I love this game back in the day. It was such a step up from the first Mario Land. Moving on to Game Boy Color. Again, the emulator is going to be the Liberto Gambat or Gambate, or however you want to pronounce it. I'm not sure. You've got the palette in here. Again, you can change all the different colours. I'm not one to mess about with it. And also, if you come into the emulation here, this is where you can turn the rewind setting on. Basically, if you don't want to cheat, you can turn that off there. So we'll have a quick look without any bezels on. So now we'll have a look at the bezel project. And it's basically exactly the same as the Game Boy ones, the bezel project on this. And again, my little favourite, the default unglazed. So now Game Boy Advance. Then press back and go down to Advanced System Options. The emulators here, the Liberto MGBA, that's what it's set to as auto. And we'll not be changing anything else on this one as well. Now we'll change it to the bezel project. And now, because the Game Boy Advance was a bit of a bigger screen, and obviously it's the pick of the bunch with these handhelds, this is probably the only one that I'd consider using the bezel project on. So here's the default unglazed. Again, I prefer the default unglazed on this. It's a bigger screen, it's not shrunk it down too much like the other ones. I think it's a lot better on this. Now the old Sega Game Gear. We'll have a quick look at Micro Machines, which is based on my favourite game on the Sega Game Gear. Brilliant how you could play 2 players with 1 Game Gear. We'll have a look at the bezel project. And now we'll have a look at the default unglazed. Neo Geo Pocket Colour Art. And as I said before, a lot of these games are in English, so we'll have a look at Metal Slug's second mission. No borders.
Pineapple. Heavy machine gun. Grenade gun.
Now the Neo Geo Pocket is a system that's not in the bezel project's listings, so we'll go straight to the default unglazed.
Pineapple.
So now that's out of the way, we'll have a look at some gameplay on a few of the systems.
No fuel. Fuel level critical.
That's another one out of the way. Starting to look at a great little system now. As I said in the video, the only thing you need to alter on these, or to make a choice on, is what bezel you're going to use. Everything else just works from the get-go. Throw your realms in, scrape your artwork, away you go. It's as easy as that. Again, if you take anything from the videos, I'd appreciate a like and a subscribe. Let me know if it's worth carrying on making these sort of videos. It's a real struggle to get to 1,000 subscribers. And basically, if people aren't enjoying the content, I might as well just not bother doing it, to be fair. Another quick thing I'm going to do with this system, what I'm building here. Obviously, I downloaded all the bezel projects. I showed you where they are in the folders. I'm just going to go in there and delete them all out for the handhelds, as I won't be using them, and it'll just save that little tiny bit of space. They hardly take any room up, to be fair, but I'm going to try and keep it as clean a system as I can. As for the next video, undecided at the minute. I might go with MAME or some arcade system, or I might do some old 8-bit systems, 16-bit systems. Not decided, but I'll decide shortly. Thanks for watching. Cheers to anybody who likes and subscribes. Like I said before, I really appreciate it if you could. Until next time, peace.